Salem, Massachusetts' most infamous historic haunted home looms above busy Washington Street. Visitors on tours and townspeople pass by every day, largely unaware of the horrors that may lurk inside. Some Salem residents know the history or whisper rumors about the land's former owner as they pass. Most just walk by unaware on their way to the gift shops next door. Those in the know shudder when they pass at night. The Joshua Ward House occupies land that was owned by Witch Trials High Sheriff George Corwin. It's alleged that he used his private home as a sadistic torture chamber for the innocent victims of the witch hysteria, and that his violent spirit still stalks the land hundreds of years later. This is the tale of the history and haunts of the Joshua Ward House, where we attempt to weed out fact from fiction. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. The Joshua Ward House on Washington Street in Salem, Massachusetts, was once symbolic of Salem's prosperity. Built for the wealthy sea merchant Joshua Ward in 1784, the two-story Federal-style building once had a grand view of the South River as ships passed through on their way to Boston. The property's full frontage view of the river reached its climax in 1830, when the Frontage Street waterway was filled in. And even then, Joshua Ward's house remained one of the most historically significant buildings since its initial construction. When George Washington visited the city in late October of 1789, he asked to stay at the house, then only a few years old. Listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the three-floor mansion had a stint as the Washington Hotel in the late 19th century. It stood vacant for years, and then it was renovated in the late 1970s. It was around that time when mysterious events started to occur. Chairs, lampshades, trash cans, and candlesticks would be found upside down when the realty company staff, who owned the building at the time, arrived for work in the morning. Papers were strewn on the floor, and candles were bent in the shape of an S. And one of the second-floor offices was ice cold, a telltale sign of the paranormal. So why would the Joshua Ward House be haunted? Well, aside from the normal haunts that tend to happen after an old house gets renovated, the answer may have something to do with the house's history. The Joshua Ward House's origins may have started in 1784, but the property's history dates back to the 17th century and Salem's infamous witch trials. The original building that sat at 148 Washington Street belonged to George Corwin, whose ghastly reputation has preceded him for 4 centuries. The Ward House was built upon the remaining foundation of George Corwin's old house. Corwin was a key figure in the history of the Salem witch trials. Unfortunately, Corwin's notoriety is nothing to be proud of. George Corwin was appointed sheriff of Essex County, and by the time he stepped into the position, the Salem witch trials had already erupted. Women like Rebecca Nurse and Sarah Good, among others, were charged with casting evil magic on the afflicted. And powerful men like George Corwin were all too willing to assign the blame and the subsequent torture. Corwin was responsible for the imprisonment and torture of over 150 accused witches, all of whom we know were innocent. In fact, it is said that he savored torturing the accused, trying desperately to gain a confession. One attempt at a confession turned into the brutal and barbaric killing of Giles Corey, the only executed accused witch who didn't face the hangman's noose. On the morning of September 19, 1692, Giles Corey was scheduled for execution. In the months leading up to his trial, there had been innumerable claims of Giles Corey being a witch. 2 weeks before the official trial, the court had attempted to push Corey to answer the formality which started the trial. Without saying the words, "By God and my country," no trial could occur. Corey refused, standing mute. Now, under English law, Corey could be persuaded by pressing under heavy weights until the words were finally said. After months of back and forth, including Corey's good friend Captain Thomas Gardner pleading with him to just confess, September 19th came. Giles Corey's day of reckoning. Corey refused to confess the crime, nor would he say the necessary words for an actual trial to continue, and so George Corwin adhered to the law, however cruel it was. Corwin put Corey into the dirt, leveling a flat wooden board on top of his splayed body. Then the torture began. One by one, large stones were placed on top of Corey, as a group of onlookers gathered round to watch the proceedings in an open pasture not far from the prison. While the hope was for Corey to plead guilty early on, he never did. In fact, it's said that Giles Corey spoke only once throughout the entire ordeal. "More weight," he ordered, as his body imprinted into the dirt. Allegedly, as Corey's tongue began to loll from his mouth, a sign that death was upon him, George Corwin unsympathetically used the tip of his walking stick to push Corey's tongue back into his mouth. Corey died not long after that, his body so brutally crushed that there was no hope for his revival. His death was the only pressing to ever occur in Massachusetts, and by the way, the pressing of Giles Corey lasted 2 long days. Despite having a hand in all 19 deaths of the Salem witch trials and over 150 arrests during the same period, one arrest stuck out the most: the arrest of Mary English. Her relative Philip English was not so enamored with the fact that Corwin, in his customary way, went to the accused witch's household and confiscated all the goods to be found there. Corwin took and took, but a year or so later, Philip English enacted his revenge by suing George Corwin for what had been stolen. But Corwin had lost everything by then and was in prison because he could not pay bond. On April 12, 1696, at just 30 years of age, George died after he slipped and fell in the snow while at home. Medical reports suggest that he had suffered a heart attack, but what occurred next is cause for many rumors that persist today. If you listen to local lore, you'll hear a variation of the tale of Corwin's family burying his body in the basement. They feared angry townsfolk would exhume his body and tear it to pieces, or perhaps Philip English would strike revenge by stealing Corwin's body as payment for the debt still owed by his estate. Either way, after some time had passed, George Corwin's body was exhumed and moved to the Broad Street Cemetery. It seems, however, that Corwin's spirit never left his land. The local newspaper reported in 1998 that employees of the Higginson Book Company who once resided in the building relayed stories of a female spirit sighted in one of the upstairs rooms, and that Sheriff Corwin himself was also witnessed on the property. Perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence to the paranormal was gathered during a holiday party in the 1980s, when the building was the home of Carlson Realty. According to legend, Mr. Carlson took a Polaroid picture of a light-haired woman enjoying the festivities. The picture that developed in front of everyone's eyes was frightening. An image of a haggard woman with translucent skin and large, frizzy black hair stared back through the picture. Was this a demon attempting to secure its next victim, or perhaps a ghostly apparition of an accused witch who was tortured in the building? Now, the photo made its way into both books and television and became legendary. It could be, however, that the photo was actually a picture of a different person with dark hair standing in front of a holiday wreath. It is, after all, a Polaroid picture from the 1980s. Definitely not a high-def pic. Photo aside, there are plenty of first-hand accounts of encounters with the witchy spirit. Robert Cahill, author of the book Ghostly Haunts, remarked that his sister-in-law saw the lady in black at the ward house. She noticed a strange-looking woman sitting in a wingback chair in an office. The woman's skin didn't look like flesh, but was almost transparent, and she was sitting almost like a mannequin, staring blankly into space. There are also reports of visitors to the house feeling as if they are being choked when they enter the George Washington room on the second floor. People attribute this sensation to Corwin's spirit due to the sheriff's notoriously sadistic approach to the witch trial prisoners. Cahill's assistant was one of those who reported the sensation, saying all the lights were out when he entered the room and immediately his throat began to tighten. It was as if someone was choking him. He felt like he was being strangled from behind, but as he wheeled around, all he saw was an empty hallway. It's rumored that George Corwin's nickname was the Strangler due to his cruelty in attempting to gain confessions. However, there is no evidence that strangulation was a Corwin tactic. In fact, it seems a bit unlikely. George would most certainly have had more diabolical devices on hand to torture his suspects. It would have taken far less energy on his part to cause pain. It may be that whatever the entity is at the Joshua Ward house, it does not like men. Women reported seeing the lady in black, while men are the ones who get physically attacked. The property is now home to the luxurious boutique hotel called The Merchant, and although the owners of the hotel do refer to some of the legendary haunts in the building, they claim to have never experienced hauntings themselves. Yet the legends persist. Whether the entity is George Corwin or one of his captives, we may never really know. What is certain is that many visitors never seem to notice any paranormal events at all. And yet there are some who have seen or felt a paranormal experience so real, they would stake their lives on it. Thanks for watching today, folks. There are links to our Patreon page and our merch shop and all of our social media in the description below. And if you would please take a moment to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, comment, and share this video, I would truly appreciate your support. And we'll see you next time as we explore more curious history. Take care.